back. My name is Devin. I wanted to kind of reframe the discussion a little bit around effect, which is what we began with, especially in terms of that offline success and the sort of loftier goals that you guys all have. I'm going to frame it a little bit more towards Lead Now and ShitHarperDid, just in terms of, like, obviously there's a lot of youth involvement and like participatory engagement that took place, like through the vote mobs and through sharing and all of these different things. But at the same time, apart from like the Orange Crush, we didn't really see a huge difference in terms of youth voter turnout. And so just to maybe speak to that a little bit and what either new campaigns or new ideas you might have to really get people involved on a offline level.
I was just looking at the stats today around election turnout, and actually the only area where you had increased voter turnout, which was universities. So I think we did make a difference. I just found that out today, which is kind of exciting. Specifically because it was a very depressing election with like overall voter turnout down, and when you're seeing like places like Guelph and like Victoria, where we were organizing, have a higher youth voter turnout, like I think that does make a difference. Weren't able to get that picked up in the media afterwards, and probably didn't do a very good job talking about that. But there was, like, in those key ridings where there was universities, there was an increased voter turnout, which is pretty cool.
I think in terms of ShitHarperDid, our main goal wasn't necessarily to get people voting, but was rather to start them talking so that they might consider voting in the future. But one thing that was on all of our lips during the election was, why in the hell can't we vote online? Because if we were able to do this, we would be seeing, I mean, we live online. Why can't we? You can buy a car today. You can have your identity stolen. You know, like, you can sign a legal document without ever touching pen to paper. You should be able to vote on the internet. You can make your voice heard, and it's something that we are sorely, sorely lacking in this country. We need to get up to date with the way that people actually communicate. So, I don't know, that's my feeling about it.
And I think one other piece is something we've heard a lot after the election is that like the number one barrier to people voting and people getting involved is feeling like their vote doesn't make a difference. And the number one thing that people really want to do to combat that is electoral reform. So we just went through this process last week where people were voting on the new campaigns they wanted us to work on, and it's a tie between electoral reform and like inequality, which I think is pretty interesting. Climate change got voted off the list, which made me kind of sad, but electoral reform's good too. It's great, it would help so much things. But I think that's like a very important context to ground this all in, is the feeling of disempowerment, and the more we can do to show that getting involved in social change work does make a difference and voting does make a difference, then the more people actually want to engage.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you see, for instance, we did a campaign earlier in the year around asbestos, and we had a little web application to go with it, which is just an augmented Google map that shows where people are signing the petition from and how many people are signing it. And all of a sudden it puts this face on impact. It's like, oh, there are 10,000 people across the country that care enough about this to send a message to their member of parliament. And if you're able to see something along those lines in the context of actually voting, then all of a sudden it becomes real. But I mean, the voting process is ridiculous. You got this little like piece of copier paper, and you like put an X and then fold it and give it to a person. They put it in a cardboard box. Like, where does it go? It's going to be a mountain of paper somewhere. But you know, someone ostensibly is counting this, but you're not. You know what I mean? It's an outdated way of doing that. And once we see that ability to track things more easily, to show, you know, you'll be able to show votes in real time, and why shouldn't you be able to do that? You know, it's not going to change people that much.
Sorry, in the interest of time, we're almost done, but I would like to get one more question. We had somebody over there.
Hi, I guess it kind of piggybacks on this question. I'm just wondering, like, in terms of the effect or the impact of your movements, like, I see that there's a great emphasis on branding and obviously promotional materials and distributing them and whatnot. Does that sometimes overshadow the message and come across as just kind of clever marketing? And like, I understand there are movements and there are
Can we just have one of the panelists respond to that one, just in the interest of time? If it's you, Cam, that's fine.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, heavy situations.
Okay, well, this was a conversation that we began right at the start of it as well, and activism, I think part of the reason that activism in its current state gets a bad name is that a lot of the visual communication you see, and especially on the internet, is tending towards the, I guess, alarmist kind of bent. You know, take for example the tar sands, the Occupy the Parliament building. Tar sands, you mean the pipeline? Yeah, anyway, the website for it is like, picture the Parliament building smeared in oil with this like giant red text over it, and it's like, yeah, okay, this is a very dire situation, but this is an outmoded way of visually communicating. And the fact of the matter is that we live in a place and a time where you're dealing with advertising messaging, you're dealing with constructed messaging constantly, and to be able to sort through that stuff, you need something that's put together in a thoughtful and a careful way. So to apply, I guess, the terms of advertising thinking to that, as much as you don't want to say it, as much as we don't like to say it, it's where we are. So without that craft, without that thought going into branding, without a unified message across a website, a Twitter, a video campaign, you end up with something that people look at in comparison to the other slick messaging that they're dealing with during the day, and they forget because it's not put together in a way that's up to par with what's going on around. So it's something that we definitely need to deal with, and it's a very difficult line to sort of toe between marketing specifically and marketing for a cause.
Thank you. Do you want to,
Yeah.
I was going to give you guys, one last opportunity to have, a last kind of comment on anything that we've talked about. You want to talk to that?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting challenges with institutions that work on social change issues is that they're often more concerned about getting their name out there than winning. And I think, Avaz just picked up the Omnibus Crime Bill campaign and used our complete messaging without getting, crediting us at all. And that's awesome. Because, the more, other groups are kind of taking it on and making the message their own, that's when you can start to win. So I think it's a fine line between the institution of brand getting in the way with winning, and I think there's a lot of tension between ego a lot of the time as an organization and needing to have other people take ownership over things too. I cannot even count the times the NDP has stolen our messaging. A lot. But that's okay, because it just kind of, is out there. Yeah, and then was that total summary? You should all be on our email list. I'd bring a sign-up sheet, but you can find it online.
Yay. Okay, thank you, Tria. Katie, do you have any last comments for the crowd?
Just kind of finishing on the branding idea. I mean, for us, the importance of distilling our message wasn't to detract from our message. It was actually to clarify what it was, because people get their backs up when they hear the word slut, and they're like, what's going on? And so our sticker was, wearing a short skirt, walking alone, had a couple drinks, still not asking for it. And people saw that and they're like, yeah. And this goes back to the conversation I had with my dad before the Georgia Strike came out. I had to call home and let him know that the thing I'd been organizing that I had neglected to name was actually, a SlutWalk. And so I called him and we were talking, and I said, so that thing I'm organizing, it has a kind of controversial name. And he said, oh, are you organizing a SlutWalk? Yes, I am. And, my conservative Catholic father said, I paid attention to the one in Toronto. Those girls were very articulate. And, so this is where the ability to distill a message is so important, because my father gets it. My father understands why slut and why we're using that to confront something that is so pervasive and that affects everybody. So, you can take your message as far as it needs to go, but we did not sensationalize for the sake of sensationalization. We took something that was pervasive and we called it out.
Well, okay, listen, you guys, thank you so much for speaking today, and I'd like to give them all a big round. So I think that the next final thing is in the big room again, so if you guys don't head back there, and have a great day.